Hello and welcome to the Sherry Nichols Live Show, where we are dedicated to your connection to the true source of love so you can live a sparkling life. Today, I have the honor and privilege of interviewing one of my most valued mentors, a man I deeply respect and admire. His wisdom is life-changing. You guys are in for a treat. Now, we have with us today the one and only John Boggs, and he is going to be sharing success tips for self-leadership with us. And let me tell you a little bit about him. John has dedicated his life to study, practice, and teach self-leadership, business organization, management, and executive success. Drawing on his background in psychology and international speech communication, John set national records as an award-winning business executive. He took a startup business that failed multiple times under previous leadership and turned it around into a thriving business that produced over $60 million annually. In 2010, John founded Maximum Sales Power, a consulting and training company dedicated to executive leadership, maximizing results. In 2013, Maximum Sales Power merged with Mary Morrissey's Life Mastery Institute, and John became CEO of that joint venture. John has trained and motivated thousands of business professionals. He's personally coached and consulted for executives with the World Bank, Johnson & Johnson, Toyota Motors, the Marriott Corporation, Century 21, Pfizer, and Citigroup. John is no doubt a master of self-leadership. He's been instrumental in guiding me through many situations in my life, and we are really fortunate to have him with us today to really share his brilliance around self-leadership. So please help me in welcoming John Boggs.
Well,
Welcome, John.
Well, thank you, Sherry. It's wonderful to be with you and your community and have an opportunity to see the work that you're doing in the world. I very much appreciate the warm greeting, and I want to say to everybody that has the opportunity to know Sherry that I have deep respect for you, Sherry, and the work in the world that you're doing through your programs. So it's wonderful to be with you.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice of you. Thank you. I wanted to start, John. You know, I know that you have not always been a master of self-leadership, and I would love it if you could share with our audience a little bit about your journey and what you learned, the skills you learned to help you to get to the place you are today, which is, you know, very, very successful.
Well, you bet. You're absolutely right. None of us are born experts or masters really at anything other than maybe crying and needing some food. But really my story on this journey begins in my early 20s. I married my high school sweetheart. I was very immature and found out very quickly that it wasn't a good match. And so I found myself divorced in my mid-20s really, and then went through a bout of alcoholism and drug addiction, and really found myself depressed, really on the verge of being suicidal, feeling like I had made a lot of bad decisions. And you know, I think most folks at some point in their lives, even if they don't go to the depths that I'm describing I went to, have moments where we feel like we've made some mistakes. And the question in that moment is how to begin to shift things in a different direction. And I was lucky enough for someone to reach out and offer a helping hand. And I think really the first move into self-leadership that I took was a willingness to learn. Another way of saying that is being humble. Now, it's not very hard to be humble when you have made a complete mess of your life, and you, not only all of the relationship failures I had and the drug and alcohol addiction, but personal bankruptcy. I actually had $7 in my pocket, and I was 9 months behind on my car payment when this helping hand reached out. And that helping hand was an opportunity to actually move to Mexico, Cabo San Lucas. And so I arrived in Mexico with an opportunity to lick my wounds and do some self-reflection. And I was willing. At that point, I was willing to follow instruction. So I began working with a mentor that was giving me instruction. And the first instruction that he gave me was pay attention to the people that had the results that I wanted to enjoy. Pay attention to what they did. Pay attention to the way they thought. Pay attention to the way they felt, and fake it until you make it, and just do what they're doing. And that was really the first step on my journey to developing a new way of life. More, I didn't set out to become a master of anything or enjoy great success. I just didn't want to suffer the way that I had suffered through my early 20s.
But you really turned your life around, though. I mean, and that, like, from what you just shared with us and the stories that I've had the privilege of hearing over the years, you really turned everything around. And so the willingness to learn, I love that you brought that up. That's the first step. But then from there, what did you do from there? Because you can have a willingness, but still things can come up, that detract you, that, and it's up to each one of us to decide which way we're going to go with those distractions and things that come up. So what did you do? What would you say is the next step after having that willingness to learn?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. For me, it involved putting together, one of the things that I noticed that the people that were successful had was two real important elements. One was they had mentorship, which I mentioned. So I had a mentor in my life that was saying, okay, now do this, now do this, now do, giving me the next indicated step in continuing to grow. And once I began to have a little taste of success, even waking up, the first major success moment for me was waking up in the morning and no longer having, I don't know if, some of your viewers probably have experienced this, where something bad happens one day. Maybe it's you get into a fender bender and you ding your car up, and you go through the rest of your day. That night you go to sleep, and the next morning when you wake up, the first thing that you think of is, oh gosh, I wrecked my car yesterday. And there's this feeling of dread. I had lived with that for a long time. The first moment of success for me was the moment when I woke up in the morning and I felt different. I felt like I was excited about what the day had in store for me. I felt a sense of joy. I had not felt that for years. And I actually wept. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what that feels like, to be excited about what the day has in store for me. That was really the first success, was just a change in my emotional state. And I wanted more of that. I wanted more days where I was hopeful, more days where I was optimistic, more days where I was willing and excited. And so working with a mentor, I said two things. One is working with a mentor. Number two really came from the mentor, which was a structure. He helped me put in place a structure that allowed me to develop the self-leadership that I am so passionate about today.
That's brilliant then, to have the structure and the mentorship there for you to keep you on track. And also, I would imagine, to keep you accountable, because that's a key component with leading yourself. Now, I know that a lot of the ladies that are watching the show may have been through, I'm sure that they can relate to many things that you've already shared. And a lot of them have been through disappointing relationships, or things just haven't worked out. And you can get kind of caught up in that emotional toxicity, right? And I know that I find with a lot of the ladies that I talk to and work with, that it can be debilitating, much like what you were sharing, your journey, but on a very, very much a I don't know, for women, it seems that we get into the space where we often feel like we're not enough, or maybe we could have done something different, and we get into this self-blame that can really just keep you going down that rabbit hole. So what, in order for us to get out of that rabbit hole, I know you mentioned the willingness, but sometimes there is, even though there's a willingness, there's not enough awareness maybe, of what you can be doing. Can you share a little bit more around the concept of self-awareness and what you can do when you're really dealing with emotional distress to that degree, of how to lead yourself out of that,
Yeah, I totally relate to and understand what you're describing. And, my self-confidence, my self-worth, my feeling like I could have done things differently, those sorts of emotions are very powerful and absolutely can feel debilitating. One of the things that my mentor taught me early on in this, self-awareness and self-leadership, really self-development process, was that anytime, so two pieces, one around self-awareness. The number one tool that we teach at the Life Mastery Institute that is related to that, it wasn't shared with me at the time with my mentor with these words, but I think these are very powerful words, is what we call brave thinking tool number one, which is notice what you're noticing. So begin to just pay attention to what you're thinking about, that we are not our thoughts. Now, the way he described it to me in those days was, your thoughts are like these clouds that are going across the sky. And what you can do is you can, when you're having a thought, imagine it as a cloud going across the sky. And you can either choose to take that cloud and actually embody it, or you can just let that one go on by. And you don't have to hang on to that cloud, that thought. And so I began to understand that in alignment with the concept, this too shall pass. Whatever is going on in our lives, it's going to come and go. So the thoughts are like clouds moving through the sky was the method in which he shared that principle. And then the second thing is if I was noticing that too many of my thoughts were either self-absorbed or had a vibration of self-pity or self-diminishment, any of those sorts of ideas, that the instruction that he gave me was, the move is to get out of self. And the method that he taught me for getting out of self was to get into service. Out of self into service. So finding ways to be of service to others is a great way to get out of self. And then obviously the other sort of impacts or effects of that became that my self-worth began to naturally increase. As I was doing something good for someone else, I started feeling better about myself. And so that was the method that he taught me. So notice the thoughts. Self-awareness comes from the ability to see ourselves, to be aware of ourselves from a perspective that is not inside of ourselves. And his method was the cloud concept. But I love the phrase, notice what you're noticing. Just pay attention to what your thoughts are. You are not your thoughts. And at that time, it was a very helpful tool because many of my thoughts were very self-destructive. And so my ability to detach myself from that self-destructive thinking was a massive step in the direction of self-leadership in a constructive way.
I love that analogy of the clouds. I've never heard that before. That's great, because it is true, they can just pass on by, which is awesome. But John, okay, so you say you had a lot of self-destructive thoughts, and a lot of people do. So having a structure, knowing that you want to notice what you're noticing, is there yet another tool that you use to keep yourself on track with that? Because even though we can notice what we're noticing, we always have the choice of which direction, if we're going to choose the direction to lean into a more empowering thought or choose the direction of not. Was there anything that you did or that you know of that is helpful in helping people make, really, what's the word I'm looking for? To have the strength and the courage to lean in to the better thought?
So yeah, absolutely. As I said, the step one is the willingness that there's possibly a better way. At the end of the day, here's what my mentor taught me. He said, John, everything that you have thought, everything that you have done, and everything that you have felt has led to your current reality, your current circumstances, your current results. If you want to continue to have the current life you have, keep doing what you're doing. And if you want things to change, then I'm going to make some suggestions. And I can tell you, I have very different results in my life. If you'd like results like I have, then try an experiment. And it was after trying the experiment for a little while where I woke up on that morning. That happened to be in 1992. It was a March day. I was living in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, which might get 6 days of rain a year, and it was a drizzly morning in Cabo. And yet I had sunshine in my heart, and it was an experience I'll never forget. And I said, oh my gosh, what he's been telling me to do is maybe it's starting to work. So that willingness to lean in. So if you're in today, what I would say is if someone's in a moment where they're feeling tempted to lean into the darkness, lean into the old thinking, lean into the old results, what would compel them to lean the other direction? And for me, that is the creation of some form of a vision, some form of a possibility of something better. Mm-hmm. So my first version of that was this man and his life, the family life that he had, the way that I saw him experiencing life in and of itself was something I wanted. I wanted what he had. And so what compelled me to lean into staying in the experiment was a vision or a temptation for something that I had a desire for. Mm. As Napoleon Hill says in Think and Grow Rich, we have to have a burning desire for a new experience to change anything. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage, folks to ask themselves, what would you love? Mm-hmm. If it could be any way, if you could make it up, any way that you would want, what would you love? And to create a vision. Now, I had not learned that particular skill set. I hadn't even read Think and Grow Rich. But I knew this guy had something I wanted. And so when he told me to do this, I was willing to try. And I felt like I was faking it. I felt like I was going through the motions. But the cool thing is, when you're in a structure, when you have support, it's okay if you're faking it. You just got to take the steps. So, and it'll work. That's the good news.
Yeah, no, that is brilliant. And it is, I love the imagery. Stay connected to the imagery of what it is that you would really like. And sometimes that means, you are going to have that compulsion to go back and to do what you've normally been doing, because that's the pattern. That is the pattern that you have lived with for so long. But having that burning desire and knowing, no, I want something else. There's a, an intellectualizing too of, okay, what I've been doing hasn't been working. So, I like the idea of the experiment, and I guess you could call that some sort of a ritual that you would do. Maybe you set up, I don't know how long you did your experiment for, John, but what's a good amount of time that you would recommend? Some people say 7 days, some people say a month, do you have any suggestions for how long?
Yeah, I do actually. And what I would say is I think some of it is in relationship to where you're starting and where you want to wind up. But the experiment, I can tell you the exact prescription that I was given, and it was 90 days. and it was put to me this way: try this for 90 days. If at the end of the 90 days it's not fruiting the results, you can always go back to being bankrupt and thinking bad about yourself, and you can have that life. It's not going anywhere. So try this for 90 days. And so I did. I put it on, and it was well before the 90th day that it moved from being an experiment that I was just toying with to curiosity of how far it could go. And the path that I embarked on in 1991, I still do a structure around that same lifestyle to this day, over 25 years later. So what I can say is that you can find a way to the life that you would love if you're willing.
Yeah. And
it's not a perfection thing, that you mentioned that. Let me just share one other quick tip around that, because there's nobody that was harder on John Boggs than John Boggs. There was nothing I had done where the level of mistake or condemnation from anyone else was as hard as the way I felt about myself. And so there are two key steps to taking it easy on me that have helped me continue to grow, because it was very easy for me to get into very critical thinking, and then that would help drive me toward more critical thinking, and then stalling out in any growth and really wanting to just put the covers over my head and hang out and not do anything. So these two things are this. Number one is the idea of making progress, taking baby steps. It's okay to take baby steps. It's okay for not every day for me to have some massive revelation and for things to change. Just do these prescribed things on a daily basis. And if you just do those, even if you don't feel good, you've done the thing today you can do. That's number one. So progress, not perfection, but progress. Number two is to remember to be easy with myself. And the way that my mentor shared with me this concept was, he said, I want you to think back to a very embarrassing or shameful moment that you feel you had when you were a kid, something that you did that you feel bad about. And so I had an image that came to mind. And he said, the challenge that most of us have is that you're thinking about that moment. Mine was when I was 13. You're thinking about your 13-year-old moment from your 50-year-old awareness. And it is not fair to judge a 13-year-old experience from a 15-year-old awareness or wisdom. 13-year-olds do things and think things, and they're at a certain level of maturity that 50-year-olds have learned from. Yeah. Do not judge your 13-year-old self with your 50-year-old awareness.
So having compassion.
Having compassion. And what I began to learn was that's not just true from 50 to back to 13. That's true from 30 to back to 29. Be easy on yourself, John. Be easy on yourself. And so just take a baby step and be easy. You're going to make some mistakes. It's okay.
Yeah. So that's great advice. Really great advice is to just focus on making progress rather than being perfect, and have compassion with yourself, looking over the past reflections. And John, since we're talking about things that can take you out, you were saying having these thoughts, what are the most common culprits that really do get in the way of healthy self-leadership? And is there a way to better prepare ourselves to really move in an empowering way when these things come up in our life to take us out? I mean, we know toxic thoughts, right? But what else gets in the way of self-leadership?
Well, for me personally, what I've learned is to identify the typical temptations that will get me off track. The first one is distraction. And so, the part of me that wants to keep me more, at my status quo, loves to distract me. And for me personally, it likes to say things like, you're going to be better off after you get all your email checked. You've got some unread emails, or, other tasks and chores that need to get done. I'm going to delay the action I really know in my heart I need to take until I get everything from the past cleaned up before I take a step forward. So distraction certainly is one. Dissuasion. When I have a vision of what I really want, one of the ways that my mind will like to talk to me is, well, did you really want that anyway? Did you really want that new relationship? Think about the way the last relationship ended, and try and talk me out of it. So distraction, dissuasion, and then sometimes it just is sort of what I like to call DEFCON 1. It's just this emotional, sense of nervousness about taking the step. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the common ways. So the way that I manage that is I do my best to not make decisions from that emotional place. It's kind of like never go to the grocery store when you're hungry, right?
Right.
What you will buy will be different. So we've talked a little bit about mentorship and structure. One of the structures that I have found very valuable is simply my calendar. And to sit down with my calendar and to mark out the times in which I am going to serve the part of me that has a dream, the part of me that has a vision for something more. What am I going to do? So in my original business career, I was in the resort hotel industry, and I had gotten down there, and I was at that point almost unemployable. They gave me a job. I started working my way up through this company. I was in sales initially. And so the question is, what is the goal? I want to be the best salesman in this company. That's the first goal. What are the best salespeople doing? Well, they're studying and learning and growing. So I needed to mark in my calendar. I said, okay, we're going to take some time in your calendar and we're going to mark out activities that the people that are doing that are involved in. So studying, reading, training. And that way it was marked in my calendar. It didn't matter whether I felt like it or not. I had made a commitment in service of my dream. Now, does that mean I didn't veer? Of course I did. Did I do it perfectly? No, I didn't. But I had my calendar as a structure around in service of this vision that I had. So if it's a new relationship, if someone's coming out of a tough relationship, what are the things that people that are in healthy relationships are doing? Put some activities in the calendar. Mm-hmm. As you're sitting thinking about the vision, not sitting and thinking about how you feel in this moment. We're making a decision to take action in alignment with the vision. We're not waiting for the feeling to begin taking the action.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's key. You're making a plan. So what I'm hearing you say is figure out what you want your life to look like, and then put it on the calendar and stick to it the best that you can. But and also, I know we've done exercise around this where you use kind of some fun either color markers or some fun different colored pieces of paper, because I think too, make it fun, right? I mean, make it fun for yourself so that you look at your calendar and you get excited about things. And John, what would you say is the best way to do the calendar? Is that individual, or is it best to do it, for like a week at a time, a month at a time, or the whole year, or quarterly? What do you think has been the most effective?
That's a great question. And I really, of course, support and agree with you, Sherry, that you want to have fun things in your calendar. You don't want to just, my calendar did not just have just all work and training. That was in relationship to that goal. But for me, it was trips. Today I'm married. I've got 3 children. I've got 2 twin girls that are 17. And I have awesome, of course, relationships with my girls today. And we do adventure vacations together. And so I know later this summer, I've got a trip to China with one of my daughters, just the 2 of us on a trip. And she and I are looking forward to having a great time together. And so as I'm in service of these other things, I'm thinking about that is on my calendar. So I think start with the year and in alignment with core values, whatever your core values are. Fun is one of my core values. So I make sure and block out the fun things that I'm going to do during the year on there. Of course, you know, my wife and I, our anniversary, that's on there. And other key moments for me in my life are on my calendar. And then what I do is I take that back and I generally don't do quarters 2, 3, and 4, other than what I already know is coming, the big things only. I will then come back to the quarter in front of me, and I'll put in weekly and monthly things that I know are going to serve my current goals. Then I come back to the current month, and I do my best to fill out the whole month. Then at the end of the month, I will review and assess what worked well. What did I make a commitment to that I don't want to keep making a commitment to? It's, you know, noticing our longings and our discontents. You know, we don't want to make commitments and serve things that don't serve us back. Yeah. So that's the way I do it. Year, quarter, month, and kind of back it up that way.
That's, you know, that's a, I love that you mentioned too, you know, even if you put it down there, but you reach a point where you realize, I don't really enjoy doing that anymore. You don't have to stay committed to it. You can, you know, go by that inner barometer, and because the whole goal is that you're enjoying your life, you know. And the other thing that you mentioned that I would love, and you know, you to expand on, because I think it has a lot to do with self-leadership as well, as you talked about core values. And I think, and you can tell me, John, I feel like if you are real clear about your core values, that it's easier to be more aware of how you're leading your life. Are you in alignment with those core values? So can you talk a little bit about that? Because, and the importance of knowing your core values.
Yeah, there's been a great series. You know, I continue to study leadership. I continue to study greatness in those that have come before us. There was a television series that just ended last night called Genius, all about Albert Einstein. If anybody's interested, it's on Nat Geo. I watched it not for the historical and of course it's very entertaining, but really to watch the way the man thought. How does a genius think? How does he navigate this thing called life? And there were areas of his life in which he was not a genius. And one of those areas was in relationship to his family. And so, you know, it was, what you can do is you can clearly look at what you have been valuing. If you go back and you look at two things. Number one is your checkbook. What do you invest your dollars in? And number two, your time. What do you invest your time in? And that will determine what you value. So as an example, it was very clear that while he did make attempts late in his life to rectify his shortcomings, Albert Einstein did not do a good job of having a, you know, whatever. It's his life. His core value was not around family. And let me say it that way. And for a man that deeply loves my family and thinks that there is nothing more important than the relationships that I'm the closest with today, I wouldn't choose to do things the way he did them. So I think number one is to assess ourselves. What are our current core values? And again, using the kind, compassionate, as my awareness grows, it's okay if these things change, not beat ourselves up, but to say, okay, this is what I've been valuing. And then ask ourselves the question, do I want to continue to value these things this way, or would I like to shift them? So for me, family is a high core value. Fun is a high core value. Honesty and ethics. Really, because what they serve for me is being comfortable in my own skin. When I put my head down on the pillow, I don't want there to be any rattle about honesty and ethics and integrity, those kinds of things, because that wasn't always the case. And so when you've experienced a situation where you aren't comfortable with yourself and you begin to understand the value of truth and honesty and ethics, all of a sudden I became more aware of that core value. So these are core values for me. And so what they're valuable because I can, on a daily basis, and when I'm doing my calendar, I can easily choose between things based on where they are in relationship to my core values.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that seems like really important information to have about yourself, so that when you're choosing behaviors or activities, that you are leading yourself towards what it is that's important to you, and that'll help you to stay in that good vibration, where you really feel like you're moving towards your dreams. You're moving towards, like you were saying, if family is a big value, that, and we all get opportunities that come along our path. What are you going to choose? And if you know that it's an opportunity that's going to take you away from a core value, then it's not going to be a big deal to make a decision about, so your life's going to get easier as well. Your decisions will become easier. The other thing that I wanted to have you talk about, because I also think this is really important in leading oneself, is your why. Why, and I know that you did a presentation talking about the importance of being really connected and clear about why. So you have a dream, but like, why is it important for you? And how does that help you to stay on track with yourself and accountable to yourself and moving yourself forward?
Yes, I actually, there's a great piece of work, The Power of Why by Simon Sinek. And so your viewers certainly can check that out in more detail, as well as a TED Talk he did on the subject. But the idea is that when we get truly in touch with why we're doing what we're doing, that it absolutely can create awareness and shift the way or the spirit in which we go about what we're doing. So as an example, my goal initially to become the best salesperson I could be in that company. Why become the best salesperson? Is it just about ego? You want to be number one? And my mentor helped me understand absolutely not. That at the end of the day, there are benefits and rewards, both personal growth. Goals are not for getting, goals are for growing. And so what I would do is I would discover more about myself through the achievement of that. And part of the reward would be a financial reward. And what would I do with that reward? I would be able to do things for my family if I were to achieve that. So why are you doing what you're doing? Are you just doing it because you've always done it that way? Most people do not have very many original thoughts. We tend to do things on autopilot. So the idea of saying, okay, you want to have a new relationship. You came out of a rough one. You want to have a new, why? Why do you want a relationship in your life? Why do you want that? And what is it you're looking to achieve? So that question can help us create a vision and really understand the essence, which are what are the benefits if I achieve this or I go after this? Often the why can be equated with benefit. What is the benefit? Mm-hmm. So very, very helpful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the other component to that I would be curious about what you would have to say about this is the depth of the why. Because I know that a lot of people that I work with or that I talk with will tell me that they want something. When I ask them, they don't even know why they want it. And then if they, I've heard that it's really important to have a why that is a deep emotional connection. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think it really matters to have an emotional connection to the why? Or is it just as, is it just as effective if it's something that's maybe a material desire?
Well, so I think it only matters if you want to have whatever it is you want to have.
Okay.
It only matters to know why you want something if you actually want it, because the likelihood of you achieving, short of I want a box of cereal and so I go down to the grocery store. I mean, there are some things where you don't necessarily need to
All right.
dive into the why. But if we're talking about a real life goal, a real life dream, because there are going to be elements that will distract you, that will dissuade you, and that will create DEFCON 1.
Yeah.
And what will help you navigate that, help you through it, will be the why you're doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that any really valuable why that I've ever come up with always has some element of good in why I want to do what I'm doing that extends beyond myself.
Mm-hmm.
That this is also good for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say just, like I want a new house, okay, why do I want a new house? I think there's an experience that I want for my family, or there's an experience that I want for myself. And so what would, if I'm single and I want a new condo and I want it to be 3 bedrooms and 4,000 square feet and I want it to overlook the bay and this is what I want, the idea is, okay, great. If I achieve that, what will then that unleash in me that I can do that would be good for others? And if I can tie my why, even if it's a material why, to some good for others, the likelihood of me actually doing what it's going to take to achieve that increases exponentially.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was wondering, because I think that it's that whatever it is that's motivating you, the depth of that. Thank you for that. And I think contribution to others can be huge, is hugely motivating. It takes us outside of ourselves. And for some, we are here for community on the whole and giving to others. And there's that sense of connection. That is what we're all looking for. So that's beautifully put. Thank you. How, John, can you measure your own self-leadership?
It's a great question and real important. So I mentioned earlier the idea that it's okay to take baby steps. And there have been times in my life where I actually felt like I was sliding backwards. So how do you know that you actually took a baby step? How do you know that you're sliding backwards? The measurement of your self-leadership really is important. So 2 tools for measuring your self-leadership. Number 1 is to get up in the morning and reflect on whatever your vision is, the answer to the question, what would I love? Remember my first story. It was this guy that I had as a mentor, his life. I was, in essence, measuring my current experience against a vision of what I thought I wanted, which was something similar to his life. So in the morning, get up, hold an image in mind of what you would love. Hold an image in mind of what you would love and ask the question, what steps can I take today in the direction of the vision that I have? And then do your best. Some days you're not going to take big steps. Some days you'll take a massive step, but just take the steps you can, or at least be willing to try, that day. And then at the end of the day, this is a very important tool that I use even today, is I do a moment of self-reflection in relationship to the question, which is, did I move today in the direction of the life I would love? Mm-hmm. Did I move today in the direction of the life that I would love? And I can always find some form of good, even if the answer is not much, I can still find some form of good to hang my hat on for that night when I'm going to sleep, of what I did that day. And some days it's more, some days it's less. But just by, we talked about noticing what you're noticing, self-awareness. This is another added tool for self-awareness. But really, it's the white lines on the road. It's the start of the day in relationship to what I would love, combined with the end of the day. Did I move down the path that I'm wanting to move on? And I actually keep a journal, and I will write in that journal the answer to that question. Did I move today in the direction of the life I would love? I also do some other writing in there, such as Did I treat people today the way I want to be treated? Do I owe anybody an amends or an apology? So I'm because part of my vision is being a better man on a daily basis. And so that's part of that process for me. So it's a reflection at the end of the day. It's an intention at the beginning of the day and a reflection at the end of the day. And then a kind, compassionate nod to the fact that I'm human and I probably didn't do as good as I could have, but at least I did something.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Now, you mentioned in the beginning that you had been following a certain structure for the past 25 years. Is this what you've just outlined for us?
That's the structure.
So the intention, and then being a man of increase and kindness to yourself, and then closing the loop in the evening with the reflection.
That's right.
It's very important to close that loop. So
yeah, the other piece of structure that is very important is a willingness to continue to grow. And sometimes we feel fearful, we don't feel ready, the timing isn't right. These are all, and our minds will say, well, tomorrow, again, a form of distraction. Delay is the other one, by the way, that I didn't mention. It's distraction, dissuasion, delay. So I just want to say, Sherry, one of the things that I've noticed is the folks that you work with and the structure of support you provide and the impact in the world that you're making. I am very honored to be a part of your community and for you having me on today. And I want to encourage, there are folks that are out there where today's the moment, today's the opportunity for you to take a step. And if you're looking for structure and support, I just want to say, Sherry, I love the work in the world you're doing.
Oh, John, thank you so much. That means a lot to me, coming from you especially. I really appreciate your sharing with us all of the tips and the strategies for self-leadership. I mean, it is such an important aspect of every person's life to get to where we want to get in life, to experience the joy that we want in life, that we want to lead that really sparkling life. So you've shared with us, that you want to have a mentor, you want to have structure, you want to start your day with intention, you want to close your day with reflection, and a lot of other nice tips in between about your core values and your whys, and lots of strategies on how to continue to lead yourself and measure that self-leadership. Is there any last, I'll call it just any last jewel or gem that you would like to share before we are coming to our conclusion here today?
Well, gosh, I again, just thank you and appreciate you. And I would say that it's never too late. There is never a moment where we are truly hopeless. And I can say from the bottom of my heart that there is help available to achieve any goal that you want to achieve. But you have to have the willingness and just a little bit of hope to reach out and ask for help. Anything that you want to achieve can be yours. And I'm a walking example that things can get really bad, and yet life can be really good. I love my life today, and I'm grateful for the mentorship, the structure, and the help for those that walk the path before me and their willingness to reach a hand back and help. And there are those in this world right now willing to help anybody achieve any goal that they have.
That is very powerful. And, you have definitely turned your entire life around. You're so inspirational, John. And I'm so grateful to you for being with us today. If the listeners would like to learn more about you, how would they go about that?
Well, I thank you. MaximumSalesPower.com is my website, and they certainly can go there and send me a message. And I appreciate the opportunity, Sherry, to visit with you mostly, and of course your viewers.
Oh, thank you. It has been wonderful as always to have you share your brilliance with us today, John. And now John and I would really love to hear from you. So what is the greatest takeaway that you really got from this conversation? And what, more importantly, how can you put that into practice, or one thing that came from this conversation that John shared with you today, how can you put that into practice today in your life? Go ahead and scroll down and post your comment there. We would love to hear what you're going to put into practice in your day to move you forward right now. And then head over to SherryNicholsTV.com and sign up to become a Sparkle Insider. And this is where you're going to get instant access to the Diamond Belief 4Cs mantras, as well as an audio on how to connect with your diamond power. Stay connected to your diamond power, ladies. This is that inner light within. This is your holy grail. Infinite love is available to you right now in every moment of every day. Until our next episode, sending you love. Bye now.